Hi, friends, and welcome back. Today, we're talking about something that can be really hard to name, but once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And it's called coercive control. Most people, if you've heard of it at all, have heard this phrase in the context of emotionally abusive relationships, like a controlling partner who diminishes our self esteem over time through manipulation and second guessing our reality. But coercive control does not only happen in private, intimate relationships. It often also shows up in large bureaucratic institutions, in workplaces, in systems like healthcare or child welfare, and especially in governments. Basically, anywhere there's power, dependency, and real life consequences. And here's why I want to talk about it today. Because although we're certainly seeing coercive control and abuse of power play out in real time in the United States right now, this is definitely nothing new at all. Sadly, many people are under the illusion that oppressive or abusive actions only take place under a certain political party's administration or by certain people. And truly, nothing could be farther from the truth. Just as it's too easy to believe that this charming, seemingly kind person that we've just met has our best interests at hand, we really have to pay very close attention to their behavior over time before determining that they're actually safe as someone to give our time, attention, and energy to and to let into our world, body, mind, and spirit. Just as that is the case, we must at this time pay very close attention to the behavior and strategies of large bureaucratic institutions like governments, public health authorities, and administrative leaders, regardless of party affiliation or ideology, before we assume good intent. It is my opinion and observation over 30 years as a social worker and almost 20 as a psychotherapist that the personality required to achieve the highest levels of power in such types of organizations is honestly one that leans more towards psychopathy. I realize that's a strong statement to make, but I will stand by it. Psychopathy means having no regard for human life. If we look at the wars raging all around the world for decades and policies that starve children and traffic them, evidence for that is pretty compelling. And that absolutely crosses party lines, whether we'd like to acknowledge that or not. The recent reveal this week of 3 million pages of the Epstein files, which has since been removed by the DOJ, is also really strong support for this. And you might ask why a therapist who has a channel on psychospiritual healing tools is speaking out about this, and I will tell you why. It is because of the deep pain that I carry, having worked with, really at this point, thousands of survivors of abuse and coercive control, both in families and interpersonal relationships, in my practice for, again, nearly 2 decades as a therapist. And one of the reasons I think so many of us are vulnerable to that control and not seeing it is that we grew up conditioned by these large level systems that normalize accepting this kind of abuse. So today I'm going to break down what this looks like at the system level and the interpersonal level. And my hope is that it might help break through some of the cognitive dissonance that so many of us have. I certainly have had it for a large portion of my adult life, which is where we can't reconcile and make sense or fathom that institutions that we trust to have our best interest at hand on a certain side absolutely don't. And they're actually much more interested in gaining as much power, control, and wealth as possible for a very small minority of people. And if we can see through that lie that we've been fed, that it's good guys against bad guys and right versus left, and instead see how we've all been programmed and conditioned to blame, shame, and oppress the other, certainly the other side, whether that's immigrants or people of a different political persuasion or women or those people that live the lifestyle we don't approve of. If we can see through that, we can be in a much better position to regain and retain our humanity, our empathy, and our inherent goodness, which I believe we're all born with, and then actually stand up to oppressive forces, contribute meaningfully to our communities, and protect the vulnerable. Often we find ourselves thinking, why do I feel afraid to speak up? Or why am I so angry at these stupid people all the time? Why am I filled with hatred? Why do I feel like I have to be perfect? Why am I scared all the time? Why do I feel small, ashamed, confused, and exhausted? It is not because you're too sensitive. It's often because we're inside a control dynamic that has slowly narrowed our life and our perceptions and vision. So in this video, I'm going to do 3 things. Explain what coercive control is in plain language. Compare what it looks like on the macro level, large bureaucratic institutions, versus relationships and families on the micro level. And 3, give you practical ways to protect yourself, maintain your agency, and keep your nervous system and spirit intact. Let's get into it. Hi, I'm Amy Rose White. I'm a psychotherapist who makes YouTube videos on healing tools. So let's talk about what coercive control really is. It is not one big dramatic incident. It's a pattern. It's a pattern of behaviors, both overt and subtle, that are designed to dominate, constrain, and shape someone else's choices. It's the very slow, often erosion of freedom, autonomy, confidence, access to resources, and even our sense of who we are. It's not just someone being mean, it is control. And what makes coercive control uniquely destabilizing is it's not only about the person's behavior, it's about the environment that gets created around us. So we're talking about an environment where it becomes risky to be honest, risky to disagree, and risky to be ourselves. We saw this during COVID times, and we're seeing it now. Whether people feel afraid to defend the people in their community, or even the Second Amendment, for fear of being called a traitor or a leftist liberal, or being afraid to question government-recommended medical treatments, the control game is the same. And in the nervous system, that registers as, I'm not safe to be free. That's the line. When you're in coercive control, the message you receive, directly or indirectly, is your safety and stability depend on compliance, period. So let's start with the micro level, romantic relationships, families, friendships. In relationships, coercive control often shows up like surveillance and monitoring, checking your phone, questioning your whereabouts all the time, tracking your spending, insisting on constant access to you. The point of that for the other person is not information. The point is power. The message is that you're not allowed any interior private world of your own, but rather that your every move is about to be evaluated, judged, and ultimately influenced. And let's face it, knowing everyone has Ring cameras now on their front porch is going to influence what we do and say, and even wear on someone's doorstep these days. And in one-on-one relationships, what happens is we start becoming hypervigilant about every small move we make. And this puts the body on high alert. It's definitely a recipe for poor mental health. Number 2 is isolation. So you might hear statements like, your friends are bad for you, or your family doesn't really care about you. I'm the only one who really understands you, or no one will love you like I do, or no one will want you if you leave. Isolation is the doorway to control because if you have no mirrors, you start believing their version of reality. And this is totally by design. Eventually, our lived sense of what is true becomes completely distorted. When we hear these types of messages enough times over and over again, we begin to believe them. And this is what propaganda on the micro level actually looks like. Number 3, micromanagement of your life. Similar, how you dress, how you talk, what you post, what you listen to, how you parent, who you talk to, how you spend time, how you should feel emotionally. A coercive person doesn't just want influence, they want authorship over your life. And if you don't comply, punishment in forms of withdrawal of love, time, affection, maybe abusive language, shame, humiliation, or constant berating usually ensues. Number 4, threats, either explicit or implied. So sometimes it's obvious, if you leave, I'll ruin you, or if you leave, I'll kill myself. But often it's more subtle than that, like the silent treatment, withdrawal of affection, punishments that are disguised as, I'm just having a boundary, or I'm making a boundary here, financial retaliation, emotional explosions that train you to avoid certain topics. That's how coercive control works. Basically, the consequences teach compliance. And as humans, we are so fundamentally wired for belonging and connection that threats to that can cause us to make massive sacrifices in the name of retaining that connection. Number 5, narrative control, gaslighting and blame shifting. So this is a big one. Coercive control often includes this message. You're crazy. You're too sensitive. You're the reason I act this way and feel this way. If you would just behave or respect me, show respect, I wouldn't have to, blah, blah, blah. And over time, you start doubting your instincts. Your inner compass gets foggy. And when our inner compass gets foggy, basically someone else becomes the GPS. And that's the whole point. So micro-level coercive control typically has a recognizable feel. You feel anxious. You feel like you're walking on eggshells. You can't be fully yourself. You feel like you are responsible for managing their mood. And you feel like the rules are constantly changing. The goalpost is always moving, and your world is getting smaller and smaller. So now let's talk about what coercive control looks like on the macro level, big institutions and governments. So zooming out, here's how it can look. Gatekeeping of basic needs. Institutions often control access to essentials like healthcare, housing, disability benefits, immigration status, employment security, child custody outcomes, access to employment, saw in pandemic times, travel, and the freedom to move about freely. So the person learns, if I don't comply perfectly, I could lose what I need to survive. And that is the same nervous system message as coercive control. Number 2, administrative burdens as kind of like a soft force. So this is more of a hidden one. This comes in the form of endless paperwork or confusing forms, impossible phone trees, shifting requirements, long waits, decision making that's not clear or transparent. And it can function like pressure, not because someone is yelling at you, but because the system is actually designed in a way that makes you exhausted and discouraged. That's especially true for receiving benefits like disability. So you either comply or you give up. And giving up often means you lose access to help. Number 3, surveillance through data and metrics. Institutions watch through medical records now, banking records, taxes, audits, case management notes. It's one of the reasons I'm very particular about how I keep notes in my practice. Performance tracking, risk scoring, compliance reporting, asking for entry or information they're not legally entitled to, like entering your home without a judicial warrant or asking your medical or vaccination status, which is actually a HIPAA violation. And again, surveillance changes our behavior even when nobody's actively punishing us. People self-censor. They walk on eggshells. They stop disclosing. They stop talking about certain things in public. They lie, they hide, and play it safe. Because again, the perception is I'm not safe to be free. Number 4, discretion and unpredictability. This is where systems get really psychologically destabilizing. So even if there are rules, outcomes often depend on the caseworker in charge, one certain supervisor, one physician that interviewed you that night, one HR person, one judge, one police officer. And when your stability depends on somebody's discretion, you learn don't ask too many questions, don't complain, don't appeal, don't be a problem. That is a control dynamic. And it's one that people of color, women, and immigrants have only known their entire lives, by the way. 5 is narrative control. We're neutral, it's just policy. Institutions will often deflect on that. That's just the policy. That's just the process. We treat everyone the same. But here's what can happen that you know as well as I do. When the system harms you, it frames the harm as your fault. You didn't submit the right thing, you missed the deadline, you didn't follow the exact procedure, you shouldn't have been there that day, you shouldn't have carried a weapon, you should have done what you were told. So you're not only dealing with loss or stress or overwhelm, you're also being told you deserve it. That is shame. And shame is a very powerful control tool. So how are these similar and how are they different? So similarities, both micro and macro coercive control involve a power imbalance, themes of dependency, consequences, a narrowing of our choices, fear-based compliance, confusion and self-doubt. And both create the same internal experience, which is shrinking ourselves to fit, hypervigilance, self-silencing, a loss of personal agency, and our uniqueness. And here are a few differences that matter. In relationships, control often hinges on emotional attachment and intimacy, love, fear of abandonment, hope that they'll change. In institutions, control hinges on access. benefits, approval, legal standing, employment, resources, documentation. So in relationships, the controller might say, or abuser, I would argue, if you loved me, you'd do what I want. In institutions, the system implies if you want to survive, you'll do it our way. Different packaging, same nervous system message. Now I want to give you a set of tools, some practical, some nervous system based, and some energetic, because protecting ourselves from coercive control is not just about being strong. Definitely not. It's about staying clear. So number one, name the pattern out loud to yourself first. Coercive control and abuse thrives in vagueness. So our first protection is language. Thinking, saying to ourselves and to others, this is not a one-off, this is a pattern. My choices are being narrowed. I'm not allowed to disagree or ask questions. Compliance is being trained. Naming it restores our inner compass. Number two, track the cost of honesty. Ask yourself, what happens when I say no, disagree, or ask questions? What happens when I ask for clarity? In healthy dynamics, honesty might create tension, but doesn't create punishment. In coercive dynamics, honesty has a cost. Questioning has a cost. It is not allowed, no disagreement. And noticing that cost helps you plan safely. Number three, build a paper trail and a reality trail for yourself. In relationships, you might journal what actually happened each day. Save texts and emails if that's safe to do that. Tell one trusted person what's happening. Document those patterns for your own clarity. In institutions, we want to keep copies of everything. Write down dates, names, reference numbers, summarize phone calls in an email to ourselves. Try to find the ways where we might legally get exceptions if we don't want to comply. Ask for things in writing whenever possible. That is not paranoia. It is protection. It's refusing to let your reality be erased. And number four, don't go alone. Reduce isolation strategically. Coercive control thrives when we're isolated. In relationships, that might mean reconnecting with safe friends, getting therapeutic support, going to a support group, letting someone know what's happening. In institutions, it might mean bringing an advocate to appointments, asking for a supervisor, involving an ombudsman, or consulting legal aid if relevant. It might be having someone sit with you while you make a call. Just even finding 1 to 2 safe people to talk about what you're seeing and your experience of reality is really helpful. I know for me that's been a lifesaver, as has finding a few YouTube channels and Substack journalists that can hold that multiple things are true at the same time instead of falling into these false dichotomies and falling for the propaganda. That's been the secret to sanity for me ever since about 2018, 2019, when I started to see the wizard behind the curtain for myself. Even having one witness changes your nervous system and your leverage. 5, try to keep your body as regulated as you can while you navigate the system. This is hard but huge because coercive systems, whether it's a person or it's an institution, often win through one mechanism. They dysregulate us. And when we're dysregulated, we forget what we were going to say, we overshare, we shut down, we panic, we agree to things we don't want out of fear, which, I would argue just sometimes is necessary, and I would never begrudge anyone that made those decisions. But we have more power when we try to stay in a sense of safety in our body, because we're much less likely to abandon our needs. So our job is to regulate just enough to stay in our adult self, and that's where my one-page nervous system reset is generally helpful. It's down below. So for example, before a hard interaction, feel your feet on the floor. Lengthen your exhale. Relax your jaw. Orient, look around and name 5 neutral objects. And remind yourself, I can go slow, I can ask for clarity, I can pause. Regulation is not some self-care fluff, it's honestly a strategy. 6, try to access low emotion, high clarity language. So coercive dynamics feed on that emotional chaos, so your power is in calm clarity, like knowing your constitutional rights and carrying them around if you need it to read them. Knowing and stating your choices. I'm going to pass on that. Whether in the macro level, you don't want to do the facial recognition software, or you don't want to answer intrusive medical questions, or offering more information, when you're pulled over for speeding, you don't want to do that. Knowing you don't have to answer everything you're asked does not provide these days any absolute protection, if it ever did, but it can help retain your agency and dignity. So it may be at times asking clarifying questions like, can you put that in writing? What policy is that based on? What are the steps to appeal? What are the criteria for approval? Are there any exceptions to that rule? I want to get a second opinion before I move forward or answer that question. Let me repeat what I heard to confirm. In relationships, I'm not available for that tone of voice. I will revisit this when we can speak respectfully. I'm not agreeing to that. I need time to think. You don't need to convince, but we do need to clarify. 7, know the difference between compliance and consent. And to me, this is the spiritual piece. Compliance is I do it so I don't get punished. And again, sometimes that's just the choice we need to make. But consent, which is more empowering, is I choose it because it aligns with my values. Coercive control tries to replace consent with compliance. So a daily practice I love is asking ourselves, where am I complying out of fear or going along with the crowd because I don't want to not belong? And where am I choosing out of truth? Even small moments of truth rebuild our agency. And that likely will result in you making unpopular choices and taking a different road than many of your peers, both in relationships and, in institutions. And that can be a very isolating place to be. What I'd like to encourage you in is that it can be worth it. It can be worth it to stay within your own integrity, your own humanity. And I'm seeing that all of the place right now. I'm seeing people break religious and political lines to say what I'm seeing is not right. I'm not willing to hate, shame, or blame my neighbor because they look differently or made different decisions than I do. And I'm not just talking about what's happening right now. I'm talking about throughout history. I refuse to speak contempt, and I refuse to wish pain on people who disagree with me. I will not fall for that manipulation. I will stand by my actual lived values of kindness, respect, and dignity for all, regardless of where we may fall on the political spectrum. And it is actually my personal prediction, and secretly my hope, that those lines just completely fall apart because of the madness that we've been witnessing in recent years. That we finally all wake up to the fact that there's absolutely no difference fundamentally between us. And if we're going to make it through this dumpster fire, we really must look at each other as allies and comrades in the fight against power, not in a fight against each other. Number 8, keep a freedom plan. A freedom plan is not always leave today. Sometimes it's saving money quietly, getting copies of documents, building supportive relationships, learning your rights, making an exit plan, reducing your dependence in a relationship step by step. In institutional context, it might be finding alternate providers, switching insurance plans when policy, moving to a different department at your work, identifying advocates, finding your people who are on the same page, and creating redundancy so one gatekeeper can't collapse your life. And obviously, we don't always have power over these things. But the goal is to have options because options grant us more freedom. So if you take nothing else from this video, please take this. Coercive control is when your life gets smaller and your nervous system learns that freedom is unsafe and autonomy is unsafe and dangerous. And whether that happens through one person or a massive system, at least part of the antidote that we can control is the same. It's to name it, name the pattern, protect our reality, reduce our isolation, regulate our body as best we can, stay clear, and build options. You're not crazy. You're not weak. If you feel the shrinking, it's real, and we can rebuild our agency. Thank you so much for watching, hyping, liking, sharing this video. I'll see you in the next one. Check out this playlist above. Until next time, may you be well, may you be safe, and may you be at peace. Bye for now.